Yes, my name is Emilio Cerra. So we are at Oxomoco in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, which is a wood-fired Mexican restaurant. Oxomoco was opened in June 2018 by Justin Basderek and Chris Walton, who are friends from actually middle school. We went through college, so they've known each other for a long time. Both have worked in the food industry for a while. Justin Basderek, being the executive chef, spent a long time working for Jean-Georges, both at the restaurant and in other restaurants in New York, and then spent some time as the person who would go around opening his restaurants. So a lot of experience in sort of opening restaurants and creating different styles of restaurants. They opened this restaurant then in what used to be a old plumbing supply store, but then took everything out and built it as it is, and with the beautiful skylights. And so Oxomoco is interesting and unique. I think a large part of that is that we've been cooking with wood fire for about 5 years, which has become more and more common, but it was a little bit less so then. We've also been kind of cooking a little bit more modern interpretation of Mexican food without a real focus on any type of particular cuisine within Mexico. So some of the favorites or classics you could say is things like the tuna tostada, the lamb barbacoa taco, which have both been on since the beginning. One that I sometimes refer to as like a sleeper hit is the Caesar salad. It's grilled, and it's sometimes people kind of don't think twice too much about a dish like that, and it's really quite a popular one. Yeah, so vegetable, it was kind of not necessarily on purpose. So at some point we started working on vegetable dishes, largely to kind of help accommodate a larger audience, as well as because that's kind of how myself and the other sous chefs like to eat. Like, we tend to just eat a lot of vegetables and like to work with nice vegetables, especially in the nicer time of year. And it just kind of happened naturally. A lot of the vegetables that we use, that we try to showcase, we don't necessarily try to bring as much from Mexico as possible. A lot of the things we do, we get from either the farmers market here or the farms here, Norwich Meadows, or there's a farm we use a lot called Hogg's Farm, and try to work that into the style versus trying to bring a lot of product from the outside, where it's, can get these beautiful, different types of squashes and peppers and whatever that are being grown here, and then use that kind of in the style that we prepare. So right now, we're leaving tomato season, we're leaving pepper season, it being the end of summer, so that's a little bit sad. But we're going into mushroom season, which is great. Some of the vegetable tradition in Mexican food, obviously there's a lot of use of beans, both dry beans, but there's a lot of use of vegetables in general. You see a lot of things like squashes, a lot of different types, a lot of wild herbs, a lot of wild mushrooms and whatnot. Obviously the huge one would be corn, but not corn how we think of like sweet corn, as much as corn as in English it's called dent corn. So it's the corn that is used to make tortillas. So it's dried, nixtamalized, and then ground into tortillas, or used for many other sort of preparations. Mexican food in general can be quite flavorful, to state it quite simply. A lot of that comes from the use of acid, not so much as in vinegar, which it is used, but a lot of lime juice, even ingredients like tomatillos that are acidic, and citruses in general. And then you have all the dried chilies, which is dozens of different types, and then all the different fresh chilies, right? Which is not just, sometimes people think of chilies as just pure heat, pure capsaicin, but a lot of it is kind of a lot more nuanced than that. And a lot of the dried chilies are dried via smoke, via fire. So not only are they concentrated when they're dried, they also have a lot of that smoky, deep kind of richness to it that is sometimes not familiar from people who are not familiar with Mexican cuisine. So the two items we're going to see today, we have the grilled carrot tostada. So we take a couple different types of carrots and prepare them in different ways. So we have carrots that are blanched lightly and then marinated in our chili vinaigrette that we make. Then we have carrots that are grilled and then braised in a carrot juice-based braising liquid that are then glazed with a glaze made with that same braising liquid, which are all served on top of a parsnip puree. That's a grilled parsnip puree with a little bit of coconut yogurt, and then a shaved carrot salad on top with mint and dill, which is a vegan dish that we've done in the past, and then now that we're going into fall, we're doing again. Well, it came about because we're seeing a lot of carrots in the market, and we're able to get really nice carrots, lots of different types. The idea was to kind of just have a carrot-centric dish and show different ways that carrots taste when they're prepared differently, right? So at the different levels of cooked, from raw to lightly cooked to all the way cooked, all kind of present a different sort of flavor and texture. So it's really cool, almost like, without sounding a little pretentious, like a study in carrot flavor. It's got a lot of different flavors and textures, right? Because a lot of times you think about cooked carrots and you just think of like pure sweetness, which is what I don't like about cooked carrots, is that it tends to be overly sweet. In this case, you have a lot of acid, you have a lot of different textures. It's not just soft, mushy carrots. And then the other dish is a grilled maitake taco. So we're getting maitakes from a company called Shogun Maitake in Ontario, which is a pretty prestigious maitake. We braise them in a mushroom stock lightly to both season the cores. They're then grilled and then glazed with a maitake butter. So we take maitakes, a little bit of shallot, garlic, brown that all off, cover it with the leftover braising liquid, mount it with butter, and then season it with 2 different types of soy sauce that's used to glaze it. So just to kind of add a little bit of depth as well as reinforce that mushroom flavor. And that's served on top of a herb ricotta with an egg yolk salsa and parsley as well. Yeah, so maitakes, I love maitake mushrooms in general. They're used a lot, so they can be a little bit boring, but I think the use of the mushroom-based glaze with these really quite interesting soy sauces, a lot of times we end up finding products like this out of pure curiosity, where we see it somewhere and we want to try it, and I want the team to try it, and then we end up being able to use it. So that worked out nicely. And then combining it with parsley, I think is like classic, and then a little bit of egg yolk as well as a kind of interesting sort of balance to the umami background. I think of what's exciting about it is, and it's kind of difficult to describe, because when we cook the food that we do, we don't necessarily try to aspire to cook like old recipes, really at all. Like I do spend a decent amount of time like texting my relatives in Mexico, asking them their thoughts about things I ate as a child or whatnot. But a lot of times the way we kind of describe it is we are trying to make food that is eats like it's Mexican food. It doesn't need to be a dish that existed before. It doesn't necessarily even need to be all techniques or flavors that are from Mexico traditionally. And even if you take a step back and look at the food and product that exists in Mexico, there is a lot of influence from the exterior, which a lot of times people don't realize. Because things like the use of soy sauce in the West Coast, or even like something like a Baja-style fried taco, which is very similar to tempura. Or if you go to Central Mexico, you have a lot of several different tacos that are cooked in a vertical spit that like they think come from immigration from the Middle East. So you see a lot of sort of influence from the outside world, which kind of, when we use those influences otherwise, feels very natural, right, to the way that the cuisine has developed over centuries. And at the same time, when we can, we've done preparations of things that are even pre-colonial, right, that are like traditionally Mexican. Things like chochayotes we've done, which are again a modern version of it, but something that comes from thousands of years ago. I would say eat a lot of different food. Eat a lot of, as much, if you're going to cook Mexican food, as much Mexican as your food, and a lot of it in the different variations of style, and I guess you could say like cost or whatnot. Anything from things you eat on like street food, which you don't see a huge amount in New York, but you see in other places, to further up the scale on fine dining, and then not just think too much about that specific cuisine, to eat food from all over the world, really. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to travel to do it, which is, I think we all want to do, but it's not always feasible. But to eat, as much different types of food as possible, because I find sometimes, even like I've said this to cooks here, who like are really into it, but all they're eating is in Mexican restaurants, which is great, and very cool, but it's like, sometimes you get kind of stuck in one viewpoint, and I went to, we have an Oxomoco in Tokyo as well, a branch there, so I went with Chef Justin in March of this year, and it was kind of came back with all these ideas that had nothing to do with Mexican food that we were cooking before, just based on the product that we were seeing, the style of preparation that we were seeing, and something that is quite different than what you would expect necessarily.